The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Got a viewer question here. It says, "Hi Perch. You may know as okay, hang on. I'm gonna pronounce this name properly because it's a YouTube channel, so you can go look up Fizz Chozu. You may know as Fizz Chozu. If you're going to look for the YouTube channel, it says from YouTube, and no, I'm not remaining anonymous. Great. So the channel name is FIZZCHOZO, if you want to go look it up. Anyway, I wanted to ask you, I don't know if there's a channel there or whatever, but he's from YouTube. So good stuff. I wanted to ask you, why are modern writers obsessed with having modern Superman stories, including adaptations, focus entirely around Krypton? Is it because the writers don't think Superman can be challenged by someone with different abilities? Or is it because the writers think the audience won't buy into anything existing in the Superman universe beyond Kryptonians? Are cyborgs, biologically warped beings, and interdimensional tricksters too much for this audience to accept? I want to hear your thoughts. Okay, so kind of to break this down a little bit, for many years, actually, Superman stories largely avoided Krypton and kind of Kryptonian stuff as, part of the comics. I mean, it wasn't like it was never referenced. It certainly was, but it was much less than I would say the last 10 years or so have given us. There's been far more of a desire to want to lean into those stories, secrets from Krypton, but back in Krypton, the characters who have also escaped from Krypton, just kind of this whole building up the mythology of Krypton. And I'm forgetting who. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to take a wild guess, but one of the Superman writers during the 80s and 90s, the Triangle era, had talked about how, there was kind of an editorial, not a mandate, but a loose mandate or a loose guideline that you didn't go there. You like Krypton needed to be very sparing because it was Superman's home and it was part of his origin story, and they didn't want to undermine or retcon part of that origin, so they want to kind of stay away from it as a plot device. And that clearly that mandate's kind of gone and been given up. So it is what it is. But at any rate, Krypton has been used a lot more as a storytelling part. And I think the reason why has a lot to do with shows like Game of Thrones. So why? How do you relate the two together? Well, there's a lot of world building you can do on Krypton because for all intents and purposes, it is a, it's a loosely defined kind of non-society, or at least it was for a while. Now it's pretty fleshed out. But for a long time, if you were a writer, you could kind of make it whatever you want it to be. You could create your own mythology, create your own stories, you could create your own kind of how the culture worked, different kind of fiefdoms. There's a lot of kind of ground to cover there. And if Superman was, on Earth, you're still dealing with Earth. So you have a lot less world building you can do. Again, I always come to this perspective, if you're not creative. And it's not to be a total insult, but the reality is you've got a hero who has superpowers, can do anything. You've got a rogues gallery that, while not as rich as Batman, certainly has, I think, a lot more diverse elements to it. And what I mean by that is, Batman has kind of various kind of levels of psychotic in his rogues gallery. Superman has, cyborg, alien, collects planets, has interdimensional trickster, as you mentioned, has genius Earth billionaire, has weirdo obsessed with toys, has, there's a whole kind of rogues gallery that span all kinds of different personalities and styles. They're not just all, and by the way, it's not shade necessarily to Batman's rogue gallery. Obviously, it's a good rogues gallery. It has a lot of different pieces to it. But if you think about kind of the different power sets and the different things, and it makes sense, by the way, Batman, at the end of the day, he, doesn't have kind of enhanced abilities. He's got his brain, he's a detective, he's got gadgets and other things, but he doesn't have the kind of power Superman does. Superman can do all kinds of crazy shit. And so as a result, his villains need to be able to do all kinds of crazy shit. So I think, even as we're seeing from the current kind of Philip Kennedy Johnson Metallo storyline, there's quite a bit you can do with Superman's rogues gallery and the stories you can tell on Earth that are interesting and kind of complex. But I think, however, for whatever reason, Superman's Rogues Gallery was deemed kind of not as interesting. And it's sometime around the 2005 era, there started to be this drive to, we really need to kind of do more to make Superman interesting. And how we're going to do that is we're going to build up the culture and the mythology and kind of world build around him. And we're going to create this whole other kind of world that he's involved in. And, that's what we're going to do. And so it thus became a lot of interest in Krypton. And I mentioned Game of Thrones because a lot of comic writers were obsessed with Game of Thrones, and in particular, they're obsessed with this kind of whole, the kind of the language around it. It was actually kind of revealing that, George R.R. Martin had been putting out those books for a while, and nobody sought to tap into the different houses and kind of all the different kind of mythology and social construct that is Game of Thrones. Nobody thought to tap into it. The HBO series came out, and suddenly all these people are big Game of Thrones fans, and they're tapping into George R.R. Martin's universe. But let's be honest here: if these people were reading the books like a lot of them claim they did, they would have been tapped in all along. I think it's anyway. Be that as it may, but Game of Thrones opened people's eyes to the fact that you could do complex societal kind of nerdy shit, and there was an audience for that. And so for a lot of comic writers, it became, we can, let's do it. Let's tap into it. Let's create that mythology. Let's put those things together. And they did. And so you saw a lot of this get reflected in comics. And I think a lot of that has to do with what happened with Superman, because it was how do we, I mentioned this in videos before. A lot of writers believe Superman is dull, that there's just not much you can do with him. And, it's not nearly as interesting as Batman. He's got, these incredible powers. He can beat anyone. So therefore, fuck it. There's nothing we can do. And so I think thus became, this version of Superman where the writers believe he's not that interesting. So in order to make him interesting, they have to go to Krypton. They have to reinvent the whole mythology around his homeland. They have to, bring heroes in that are also powerful like him. So they'll be able to go toe to toe with Superman. I mean, never mind the fact that, the majority of Superman's Rogues Gallery, when written well, could absolutely go toe to toe with Superman and had ways of kind of defeating him and putting him in a bad spot and causing him damage. That nobody had any problem with this for decades. And then suddenly it became, well, nobody can stand up to Superman. So we're going to have to bring in all these other Kryptonians and other elements in order to do it. I don't know. It's a weird way you get there, but to me, that's where it all came from. And, that's really what you're seeing. So anyway, there you have it. That's what I think. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What's the deal with Superman? Do you like the Kryptonian stories? That's another aspect. I mean, maybe you're listening to this going, I never had a problem with any of this shit. I don't know why you are. So let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.